Then you come out of that judgment place. You come more deeper in the body, you come more to the heart. And because the mind takes direction from the heart, but the mind always wants to figure something out. So you have to let it be in that place of figuring something out, but you don't have to be in charge of that. Just go to your heart, and your heart can tell your mind what to do. Think of your heart as the grandmother, the revered grandmother. Mm-hmm. And the mind is like the soldier. I got to do this. I got to protect the family. I got to do this. I got to be the warrior. I got to figure this out. Fine. That's your character. But take your directive from the grandmother, because the grandmother is the only one that soldier is going to stop for. So when the grandmother says, sit down, that's when that mental soldier goes, whoa, all right, stops everything. Yes, grandma. Right? Because there's a respect there. And refocus the mind, because the highest capacity of the mind is to focus. It's mostly chitter chatter. Now decide use your consciousness, decide what to focus on. Might be the heart. Sometimes you put your hand there.
What if you were the living embodiment of all pervasive peace? What if all sentient beings all around you increase their vibration towards harmony by merely being in your contact? What if, through conscious reasoning, focused will, and intentional living, you reform yourself, thereby becoming a catalyst and sparking transformation in others? I'm Shilpa Lewis, meditation, mindset, and mindfulness coach for midlife mompreneurs, and you are listening to Omnipresent Awareness, the podcast that will inspire you to use your story to serve humanity, and not just healing, but thriving as souls, each fulfilling their highest purpose. Namaste. Thanks for tuning in to Omnipresent Awareness. This is your host, Shilpa Lewis, and welcome back. Okay, so I'm running a little challenge as I'm trying to get more people to discover this podcast and the conversations that inspire those who value personal growth. And the best way to do that is to leave reviews. You can leave a review on Spotify, Google Podcast, or Apple Podcast. So here's a little request from me to you. If you feel like you have received any value at all from these episodes, then please write a little review and take a screenshot of your review. Once you've done that, email that screenshot to me at omnimindfulness@gmail.com. Once I get your screenshot, you will receive one of my infographics. Spark your meditation practice through Sankalpa. Sankalpa is the Sanskrit word for intention setting. Along with this, you'll receive a link to my guided meditation where you can daily practice intention setting with some inspirational music and breath work. This infographic, along with the guided meditation, is guaranteed to have you start your practice for meditation with a spark. It is my gift for you for being a listener, being a supporter, and of course for you to be able to manifest the best meditation practice. So thank you for showing up, listening, and being inspired, and most importantly, taking action. I appreciate you. So again, please don't forget to take a screenshot of your review and send it to omnimindfulness@gmail.com, and I will send you that infographic and the link to the guided meditation. We are now in the season of Seeds of Abundance, which is our third podcast season honoring spring, new mindsets, and abundance. This season will cover mindful money mindset, movement and healing, law of attraction, and embracing the feminine energy. Up next, Jamee Culbertson. I had the pleasure of listening to Jamee at a recent online somatic movement summit, where she talked about the Alexander technique as a path to peace. Jamee is an internationally certified Alexander Technique instructor and teacher trainer, offering lessons in the Boston area for over 25 years. Jamee is also a senior instructor at the Universal Tao Boston School of Taoist Practices, teaching classes and workshops in Tai Chi, qigong, and ancient meditation techniques. Jamee's earlier education includes study at the neighborhood Playhouse School of Theater in NYC and Berklee College of Music. Jamee's past work as a documentary filmmaker won an award for the film How It All Began: Origins of the Universal Tao System. Jamee uniquely blends ancient Taoist practices with Alexander technique and spiritual healing techniques, opening the way for deep personal transformation and self-empowerment. Over the years, Jamee has shared her knowledge and experience with numerous institutions in the Boston area, including hospitals, fitness centers, colleges, and women's centers. She also holds live and recorded classes where she can reach people globally. And now, here's Jamee. Jamee, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. It's very nice to be here with you. I look forward to our conversation.
I do as well. Well, I became familiar with your work and connected through the Somatic Summit last week. And I was really tuned into how I felt when I heard about the Alexander technique. And you talked about that as a pathway to peace. So for our audience, just to get started, maybe you could share a little bit about what is somatic and what is Alexander technique as it relates to your history.
Okay, sure. You know, I think a very easy way to think about somatics is awareness in movement. Okay. And what you're learning to be aware of is yourself. You're becoming more conscious about perhaps how you're moving, where you are, and how you want to coordinate yourself. What choices are you making? What choices do you want to make? Because pretty much everything is energy, information, and consciousness. But you need to locate yourself first, because we can be very far-reaching, right? We can, even with our heart, we can be concerned about someone across the planet or situation, and our heart goes out to this turmoil, right? And we can forget that our heart is pouring out and pouring out and pouring out. It may be a bottomless well, but you want to have your own container and save some of that for yourself, right? So there's a whole way of going about that, but you want to know where your energy is, where it's going, and when you feel like perhaps you're running low, you need to pause and then go take care of yourself, take care of your own needs, because the physical body has, it's limited, right? But energy is unlimited, right? Physical body is limited in that there's a point in which you need water. There's a point in which you need to have food, or you need to have sleep. And then you recharge and you fill up again, and then you're ready to go. But you've got to manage that as you go throughout the day or day to day. And, but energy is infinite and constant and changing, always changing, right? So there's nothing to get rid of. It's only about transformation when you're talking about energy. And like I said, everything is energy. So if you have an emotional upset and you perhaps have a rising up of all these feelings, it's nothing that you can get rid of, but you can transform it.
Yeah.
That was a big awakening for me when I started to understand that.
And I feel like while I've been around these concepts most of my life, it's truly beginning to resonate on a deeper level for me, which is, I wish I could have told my 20-year-old self some of that.
I know, believe me. You know, I think we learn things in a spiral, like we learn something, we think we know it, but as we continue on, we have to revisit things at times. We thought, yeah, well, I learned that already, but here I am again. But you've got life experience in between and insights, and you can probably, you know, manage being with yourself to go through the experience with a little bit more of support or compassion, you know, when you meet yourself in having to relearn a lesson, if you will.
how did you come, maybe you could share a little bit about your background, how you arrived into this space, or were you always working in this space?
No, I had I was a musician. I suppose I still am, but I'm not real active. I'm not performing. But I was going to Berklee College of Music myself, learning to read and write music. And I was into the whole scene. And I was in my 20s. So lots of rock and roll and a little jazz. And at one point, I had a health crisis. Okay. And that usually is a turning point for many people. So I had to address some excess, let's say, or some cystic masses in my reproductive system. Very scary at the time. And the doctor who discovered this said, well, I'll give you the name of a surgeon. You can go right to it. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And you know, at these junctures in your life, sometimes the right people show up to offer support and new ideas. That's exactly what happened. I met a teacher. I met a group of people. They gave me the name of someone for a second opinion. And this was someone back in the 80s that was not so popular at the time. She's very popular now. This is Dr. Christian Northrup. So I went to see her. She was up in Maine, had a nice office up there. And that was rather life-changing in terms of her holistic point of view as a Western medical doctor. So I began on a new journey to learn about myself holistically. Body, mind, spirit, emotions. And I also met a spiritual teacher, a Lakota woman, who also took my hand along this path to show me new ways of being, loving myself, and that spirit is also tangible, right? And she also offered me some tough love too, because I needed to wake up, you know. So eventually through that process, you know, I was still working, but I was investigating myself more. I came upon a Tai Chi class, and back in the 80s, there weren't too many places where you can learn about holistic stuff. There was not a yoga class on every block like there is right now. Right?
Especially where I live in California.
Yep. So there was this one place that offered all sorts of classes. So I signed up for a Tai Chi class. My brother had done it in the past. I grew up with TV shows and Bruce Lee and all that. I thought it was cool and fun. So I took a Tai Chi class, and that led me to some meditation and some qigong. And there was a system within that where I continued to study and then became certified. So that's kind of how it began and branched out. And at some point along the way, I found the Alexander technique, which was, again, incredibly transformative. But as I said earlier, all of this helped me to find where I am, to find myself, you know, rather than defining myself based on all the mirrors out there, or all the judgments and opinions out there, or whoever I was trying to please, however I was trying to get love, you know. This became an embodied experience, which is very somatic, right? Mm-hmm. Who are you? Where are you? Mm-hmm. And how embodied are you? And that's an extraordinary experience. And experience is, you know, some people say it's the best teacher, right? So, you know, I've come back to music a little bit, but not in the same way at all. Just really more personally, and to do a little creative writing. But I have great fascination for this new way of living, and continue to evolve and understand energy and spirituality, and I have my own experiences, so that I can be in the world differently, right? I manage myself so I can be in the world differently and well, rather than managing the world so I can find a way to fit in. You see the difference?
Absolutely. And that has become even more crystal clear in the last 10 years, having spent majority of my career in corporate, where I was reacting off of so many mirrors, and often felt like my true self was lost. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until the last 10 years where, through reflection, I feel like I've become more, the concept of embodiment is not something esoteric anymore. It's truly where there's an alignment, authenticity that is coming out. And I see that among people who I've now been gravitating towards, like yourself, who have lived that experience.
Yeah, it is a lived experience, right? So I really, very grateful that I get to share it with other people, whether through conversation or do some hands-on, or with someone with some hands-off, and we work with the energy. It's really extraordinary because it's quiet, it's subtle, and it's profound.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with a good contact and a good way of moving, as well as something that's really quite quiet and soft. Both have their effect and are both useful.
Now, in the concept of somatics, my study of that, what I feel is more of an emerging field, or something that may have been around but is now better understood by modern holistic practitioners. Yeah. And Tai Chi, qigong, Tao practices, yoga, they're all different, and Alexander technique are different ways to practice the subtle energy arts, which is more, I think, broadly known now as the somatics. When you came upon Alexander technique, share with me how that became something where you felt called to practice it.
Yeah, great question. A calling, right? So it was a suggestion that I might like to become a teacher and really practice it, help others versus just for myself. And so I had that in the back of my mind that maybe this is something that I could spend more time with. And I really learned about it because I went for a psychic reading with somebody. A friend of mine went to see someone and had a good experience. And I was at that juncture, where do I want to focus? Because I wanted to do this and this and this and this, and I didn't want to miss anything. So when I went to go see this person and I explained that, and he said, no problem, just go to the hub. Why don't you learn the Alexander technique? Because it's something basically that you can bring into everything you do. Some people think of it as a pre-technique, but you can also do it in the midst of your activity. And he also said that it would help me with my singing voice and help me not to get arthritis, because I guess he foresaw perhaps that would be the case. My mother had it, and there's different familial patterns that come about. And so far, so good, right? This was almost 30 years later from that suggestion. So far, so good.
No, and earlier, for the people who weren't there when you and I were having a conversation before I hit record, we talked about Paul McCartney, who I'm a huge Beatles fan. Could you share what you were talking about?
Yeah, sure. So exciting. Last week, Paul McCartney played a concert here in the Boston area at Fenway Park. And, I hadn't seen a concert in a couple of years. I went with some friends. We had some very high seats, but it was great production. And it struck me, that the way he was standing, his feet were a little wider, a little bit rock star stance, and he was just standing up singing. Now I learned that he's going to be 80 years old this week. And then after that, I'm sharing my experience at the concert. A friend of mine says, well, did you know he studied the Alexander technique? I said, no, I had no idea that he had. I know that a lot of famous names out there, have studied it, but I didn't know he had. And then it just clicked and made total sense to me.
Absolutely. And I was sharing with you that my ukulele teacher, Josh Brill, I believe studied it as well. He comes from the same college as you, Berklee College. Is that how you pronounce it, right?
Yeah, like Berkeley, California. It's Berkeley, Boston, but it's spelled differently.
Yeah.
It's with two E's.
And so it sounds like it can help with different areas, and not just, say, music. Perhaps someone like myself I've been working at a computer since I was very young.
Absolutely. It is. It became popular amongst theater and musicians initially because Alexander himself was an elocutionist. He was a speaker. He would go on stage and recite Shakespeare. They didn't have microphones back in his day, the turn of the last century, you know. So he would speak and he would lose his voice. And so he would go to the doctor and say, hey, what's happening? I need my voice. And they'd look and say, well, it'll be fine. Just rest and then it'll come back. But this was a cycle. It happened over and over again. So finally he said to himself, what am I doing that might be contributing to my problem? Very enlightening question.
And I'm actually surprised because it takes so much self-awareness to get to that point where you can contextualize where is this coming from.
Yeah, and first he was looking for an answer from the doctors, and that's okay. But if they can't fix the problem, he said, well, maybe I can. And it took him years and years and looking in front of the mirror and seeing, what am I up to? What am I doing? How can I use my mind to affect my body? And at his time, there was not an understanding of the mind-body connection. If you had a problem with your mind, you'd see a psychiatrist. A problem with your body, you'd see a different doctor, and never the two would come together. So Alexander was really in the forefront of that, understanding that the psychophysical unity is a phrase that he coined. And so from there, I mean, truck drivers, mailmen. I talked to a policeman out in the construction in front of my house yesterday. His belt is so heavy, his feet are sore, but he has to stand for a long time. But can you stand well, right? If you can stand well and renew yourself throughout that period of hours, you'll have a better time of it, Alexander Technique helps you to organize yourself outside of what your habits might be. And you discover some of the habits along the way. It has to do with how you balance your skull on top of your spine, right? Because I can pull in and walk around like that, or I can stop pulling in and then I start to right myself. So it's very much like a non-doing thing, but it's very much of a conscious choosing in the now to allow for change to happen. So it's great to have a guide. So an Alexander teacher, I have taught lessons and classes online, but certainly in person. When you're in person, that you have a physical touch with someone else. Now that we're doing that again, right? Mm-hmm. Get close to each other. And that offers you a real kinesthetic change. When your kinesthesia and that sense is awakened, it's very experiential, and you can feel the contrast of maybe how you were organizing yourself before and how you come into a different way of freeing yourself and feeling connected and light and tall. Yeah. Yeah, I can go on and on. So I hope that.
Just a few days ago, I took a 1 hour free online course just to get a sense of it. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned, I became familiar with this technique through observing your class during the summit last week. So when I took this class, they talked about the anatomy, the structure, the bones, but also about the conscious awareness of what you're about to do before you do it. Mm-hmm. So when you're like rotating your head, really thinking about it. But ever since then, like I spend a lot of time cooking. I love to cook. And I stand in front of the range and I'm cooking. And yesterday as I was making the pasta and other things, I realized, oh, well, I'm kind of leaning this way and my back is feeling really tight. And you become just more conscientious, I suppose. Mm-hmm.
When your body's always balancing. There's never like a point where, okay, I'm balanced, because there's always movement. So think of it as balancing. So if you spend a lot of time forward with the pot and stirring the pasta, etc., you bring yourself off balance. So then there's other muscles that have to engage to hold yourself up, but those muscles might not be endurance muscles. So after a while, you feel the ouchie or the tense, and it's like, oh, gotta let that go. So what I'm trying to say is that the body is doing what it does well.
Yeah.
Right. So it's bringing you into a new balance. So when you get that sensory awareness of that tension, that wakes you up to the present moment where you can make a choice, and then you can change that. So you can wait for that sensation to make a choice, or you can make a choice ahead of time before you have the sensation, you know. So through your awareness, you can allow yourself to be on the ground and deal with gravity differently. So you can be softly in your back rather than holding in your back, right? And then your limbs fit better, and then you can make the pasta, etc., from a different stance, from a different way of allowing for that verticality. Yeah. So it's like you reset. A couple minutes go by, and then you reset again, right? Because we get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Someone like myself, as I mentioned, learning to code and program from 12 and always having computer jobs, I get really stuck in my head. Even though I practice meditation, I can get cerebral about things. Yeah. When I was setting up on the Alexander technique, I read, and it sounds like you're resonating this, that it not only helps you with pain or injury of the past, but it may help with improving your stance on daily activities, such as cooking.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that the body can move and do and be active with or quiet with. Yeah. You can apply this because it's helping. It's a technique, so it helps you to access what you've already got, which is your own support through your own human design, right? And we layer that with stress or worry about the past, planning for the future, and we kind of pull in around all that. We narrow in, and then we've got a holding pattern going on. So it helps you release that and come into a depth of support. You know, the spine has a nice curve and it goes vertical from the ground, right? But most of what we do is here, horizontal, people, places, things. And then the computer screen here, we get drawn in, we get sucked in. But here's the computer, but here's me. I see the computer and I see you because of my eyes and the way it's related to my brain, right? So if you come into your body and just see the computer, it's a different feeling than going there to get it, right? I already have my vision, my ability to see, so I can sit back with that sense in my brain and look at the computer. Yeah, that's helps me stay softer in my back. Can you get a sense of that yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of when I had taken some of those ukulele lessons from the teacher who practices Alexander technique. And before we'd even start, we would spend 10 minutes meditating on scanning our body, getting into the sensations of the fingers before they even touch the ukulele. And now it's reminding me of so even now, like when I was talking to him, like suddenly feeling, okay, now if I'm inside my body, then this is just one prop, so to speak, what I'm engaging with.
Yeah, and we are here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, energy keeps the body and our spirit together. You can think of energy as qi. It's more of an Eastern word. Tai Chi, qi means energy. And if you have plenty of energy, good energy, right? Then you have a good sense of being awake in your body. And if you have low qi, then you start to feel a little unwell or tired, right? So you always want to be able to access a way to build up the qi, right, to give you energy. I think I mentioned in the beginning that the qi is intangible, but it's infinite, and my body is limited. Yeah. So there's a way of renewal that has to happen. So if you just sit for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you meditate on anything in and around your body, you have a sense more of where you are, and allowing for the full weight of your body in the chair.
Yes.
Right? And a little sensory awareness while you're listening. And you breathe, take a breath. Right? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And then part of the Alexander technique would be learning a non-doing approach that does not require excessive tension through muscles, but is more intention. And then the energy that comes to feed that intention, and then the engine, the power that gives the energy, activity. You go into action at that point.
Yeah.
There's different ways to talk about it. Sometimes I bring in some Tai Chi principles because there's a lot of non-doing in that as well.
Absolutely. And I practice qigong, and the more I learn every day, when I practice it, I feel like there's a subtle learning that occurs, not only in terms of how my body processes the energy and the shift, but how my intellect processes the information that's happening. But when you were talking about coming back to the present moment and the chi, it feels like we're almost aligning with that energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we have a design for the body, right? Because there are qigong practices that can really help you to take the energy in and around you and get a really good match with the physical body. Because have you ever heard this phrase? Gosh, I'm so worried, I'm just beside myself, or I'm beside myself with worry. Well, guess what? You are. Your energy is kind of excessively over to the side. How do I know that? There's a whole process, you can tell, and I've caught it with myself. So there's a way of bringing the energy and equalizing it around you, in and through you, and then all of a sudden you feel like you just woke up. It's very renewing, very refreshing. And I created a course. It's the course I created, not the content as much, but it's called the 13 Points of Power. And it's a way of connecting certain portals around the body and getting them all harmonized with each other, right? And then that is a way of really matching your energy with your body. And it's really simple, and it's really powerful. And it's something you can do in about 10 minutes before you go off to work or in the middle of your day, just to reorient yourself to where you are in the moment.
I would love to take that course. Where can people find this course?
Well, there's two websites. One is the Universal Tao Boston. Tao is spelled with a T. Universal Tao Boston.com. And there's a bunch of courses there. I'll have to check to make sure the link is up. I like to teach it live also. So I'll be giving that course probably in July. Okay. And there's another course called 12 Days of Transformation. And that will be a live class also to practice something called the 6 healing sounds. And it's wonderful for transforming your energy, especially your emotional energy. And we all need that these days. So the other website is my own personal website, jameec.com, JAMEEC.com. And there's just a bunch of news there about me and certain things I'm doing,
That's wonderful. I will definitely share those links in the description and on my site. One concept you brought up earlier that I know would really resonate with is women and midlife women, entrepreneurial women who are working and balancing so many other things. You mentioned the word flow. Could you describe that concept as it relates to these energy arts?
Sure. Flow. All about flow. That's kind of a catch-all name I have for my Jamee C website. Flow is a natural movement, right? Rivers flow, and they don't stop just because there's a rock in the way. They kind of change direction, move around. So I want to give you an example of flow around our emotions and information that we're getting from our body and from our emotions, and how we can learn to see these sensations as information and listen and find out what the conversation is. For example, the feeling or the emotion of frustration, whether it's because we're juggling too many things, or we have too much to do in the day, or we're working on something and it's just we're not getting there. So naturally, we get frustrated because we still want what we want. The problem is not the desire. It's not having the desire yet, but the information that frustration is giving you is simply saying the way you're going about it is not going to be successful. You need to change your strategy, just like the river would go around the rock, right? So if you take a pause and go, okay, I hear that, I'm getting that sensation right through my body. It's telling me I need a new tactic. Or perhaps I have a need that needs to be met first. Oh, I didn't realize I have to go to the bathroom, right? How many women in their busy lives hold their pee until hours go by, right? Right? Because we're always taking care of other things. But if there's a need, just a natural need that has to happen first before you can proceed, it's best to meet that need. Then come back to it, because perhaps, and we'll take the subject of peeing, when you eat, there's a chemical change in your brain, and all of a sudden you can get a new idea.
Yeah.
You know, and then you go back to the thing you're trying to achieve and just take a little bit of a different tactic. And that's the gift of frustration. Yeah. That's the gift of frustration. It's a sensation. It's like, sometimes we don't really hear it until it's loud enough, but we will hear it. So if you start seeing it more like a virtue, and it's coming right from your body, that's exciting. That's, wow, I know something here. Yeah. There's information for me here. And then I can shift the energy and find another way to solve my problem or reach my desire.
Yeah, the shifting of energy is interesting, because the more I've now taken upon myself doing the qigong, other energy work in the morning, or the meditation, which I now feel is energy work itself, meditation, that some of my best ideas come right after I'm doing them.
Right? Because you're just clear. You clear that busyness. And I think too, it's like women who are busy trying to achieve, it's like you can find more flow if you start to reframe a little bit what's going on. Busy is a funny word, right? Are you just busy, or you simply don't have time? Or are you simply not making it a priority? So if you make something a priority, that's what you're going to do first. Yes. And then everything else you want to do during the day that's going to make you busy, well, it'll have to come next in line. Yes. So just don't forget yourself. Take a moment to meet your needs, and especially the natural needs: food, water, pee, sleep, yeah. Right? Because whenever you bring your attention back to yourself for a moment, you take a breath, and if that can help you be a little more vertical instead of really just jammed into people, places, and things, which are more the horizontal plane, that can just give you a little more flow in the moment, and a chance to reassess and what really is the next priority. Because if you think of it, your consciousness, your soul, your higher self is here with you to experience, and will only give you information about the next step to take. Your soul is not the one that is like, I'm going to plan my day, I'm going to envision my goals, things like that. It's like, no, just the next step. Okay, so another example, for instance, getting in touch with your consciousness. If you find yourself nervous or anxious about something, we tend to get really wrapped up in that degree of our nervous system, and we stay in that anxiety, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But if you notice you're anxious or nervous, the you that is noticing is not nervous or anxious. Right? So if you bring a little more curiosity to the you that's noticing with a breath, right? That high peak of nervousness and anxiety can start to find flow and a little bit more of the ground, right? Anxiety is a very up energy, like, wow, like a live wire. But you get your feet on the ground, you start to feel like you could plug in that nervous system, that anxiety, with some breath, and be aware of the you that's noticing this. Yeah. That's your really higher conscious mind.
I like that idea. You just mentioned something that I heard during the summit, and may have actually come from you. And you mentioned, so when we are engaged in ourselves and our bodies, it's vertical, versus when we're engaged in the outside world, horizontal. Mm-hmm. And I'm a visual person. Suddenly I'm seeing myself with a diagram. I'm thinking, whoa, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, you want to get that confluence of doing and being that might be in the middle of that diagram, right? Because just think of it, there's so many times we'll get sucked into what's in front of us and sometimes down, whether it's the stove, the computer, the keyboard, the sink, and our energy and our body will kind of follow that focus. But and that's when we start to get off balance a little bit, and your back will engage to hold you up. That's a smart thing, but it's a plan B. And plan A would be, where's the verticality while I'm managing these things? Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to see this person. I've got to walk across the room. That's horizontal. Whether to see a person or go to get a thing, or to go to a place. It's all in the horizontal. So if I have a sense of myself and my back while I move forward, or even while I'm sitting here, right? I don't have to be drawn into what's in front of me and down. And we're so visual that that's kind of the scope. We don't have much attention to what's behind us. Yeah. You know, on Zoom, I can see what's behind me. That's a different way of being visual, but I can also sense the space behind me, the space above me and my feet on the ground. And it's a practice, it's all. Yeah. You learn something, you put it into play. And anything, if you really want to make changes, you figure out what the tools are you're going to use, and you spend time with it every day. Yeah. And after a little while, change it up a little bit. We all need renewal, so we can stay alive with it. But something every day that is going to help you move forward with, where you want to be, and growing in your sense of self, feeling more embodied, feeling energetic and juicy and able to manage all the things, or decide, hey, those things can wait. Those aren't a priority, right? And then you cut out the things that are superfluous. Thank you. Coming out and I tripped up my tongue. Superfluous, right? And when you start to get into that kind of stuff, it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe I need to play a little bit because it's really not that important, but I need a break. Yeah. I want to stay with the things that are a priority. And then I'm starting to scroll on my screen on my phone, or I'm starting this. And you think you're wasting time, but you're not. Again, it's information. It simply means I need a break. I don't want to waste my time on the screen. I want to get back to what I'm doing, but maybe I need to walk. I need to get up, go to the other room, get some water, come back. Just a little refresh for a couple of minutes. Then you come back to the priority. Yeah. And then the screen just, whatever's important to you.
I got so much out of that little piece, what you just said, that just taking that break, because I am go, and it's not till like my son is asleep, I've done my nighttime rituals, and I know I should just be seated in meditation, but I need some sort of time, a gap, because my brain is still moving a million miles a minute, and I beat myself up. I'll be like, you should be meditating. What are you doing? You're scrolling on Facebook.
Well, if you're going to scroll, do it on purpose, right? Instead of beating yourself, say, well, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes to just veg and scroll. Then you're doing it on purpose, right?
It's being deliberate, right?
Right, being deliberate. Because anytime that you're judging or shaming yourself, it's a mental activity. It's a mental process. It's not heart-based. The heart is going to be more like, I'm going to assess, how am I doing? Oh, I'm getting a little better. Yeah, I think I need a little rest. It's okay. My mind's going to be right, wrong, left, right, analytical, judgment, all of that.
And I am so good at self-judgment.
Right? Well, me too. But what you learn over time is that it's just information. Oh, I notice I'm being judgmental. That's a very mental process. Can I bring my mind into my body?
Yes, absolutely. And I've been told by more spiritual friends and others that I do have that balance between left and right, male and female. I'm not just one or the other. But often when I'm doing work, I get so analytical and so judgmental.
Yeah. I've had students who I absolutely love that come in and they're really intellectual. and they do it for a living, right? They solve problems, they work on a computer. And so I don't want to interfere with their intellect and saying, don't do that as much. That's not the idea. But could we be more aware of how you're using yourself to do that work so that it's not a hindrance on your body?
Yes.
Right? Like, if you're thinking in such a way that you're holding your breath, or you can't stop until you get some resolve to figure something out, you're going to be pushing or squeezing your body somehow. So there's a way of learning not to do that and still stay with that intellect to solve the problem. So there's no conflict with the body and the mind. Yeah. But it takes some time. And truly, when you discover, I have a body, I can breathe, it's better. All of them say, I like this. I can still do my work. I can still be analytical, and I can still breathe and have a body, and then I go out for a bike ride and have an extra special good time, because with some of the work you do with computer, you do have to stay in a process.
Yeah. And you were mentioning things like one woman saying, I'm besides myself. I have often experienced that when I'm in a new context with my family, it's almost having like an outer body experience. Like I'm observing and I'm like, I have to process things, like, and becoming grounded back in my heart and in my body is a transition. Like, I don't know if it's subtle what I'm trying to say, but I've experienced that many times when I'm suddenly in a new place and I'm like, I'm the observer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think being in touch with your breath for a moment is a good idea, and perhaps not be at a rush to figure things out. Because if you breathe and you slow down a little bit, and then less analytical or trying to process or figure it out in the moment, but it takes a little bit of trust that you'll just know what you need to know. So you come back and breathe a little bit. Maybe there's nothing to say in the moment, right? And then something will happen, you can respond. Especially family can trigger us a lot, So I think the more we can pause, breathe, not be so in a rush to act or say the right thing, the breathing can just feel your feet on the ground, and just keep coming back to yourself. When we're in a room where there's a lot of flurry, we tend to want to get into the flurry and again, try to manage it all. And sometimes we can be very good at that and help everybody in the room. But sometimes it's not your job to do that, So it's like finding the calm in the eye of the storm. Just look at any spiral, any vortex, there's space in the middle. It's kind of like they talk about in our cell of the human body, there's more space than thing, right? Particle. So it's like, can we rest in that space, breathe, even if it's 5 seconds before we bounce out, and then you come back, I've had to go to the bathroom and just breathe and, or, wash my hands for a moment just to shift the energy like that. And then I'll go back in and just see what's going on, and then, just recognize that, these are your family members. These are the ones you signed up with. So then you find something to enjoy about them. You know?
And I often think about that. It's a twofold thing. One reason is those on the topic of being triggered and not breathing. There are people in my life that have done that. And what often I feel is they're a mirror. They're teaching me something that I need to learn about myself. But by the same token, sometimes I'm like, Shilpa, just breathe.
Yeah, sure. But there are big lessons and little lessons, not everybody's there to, you don't have to make yourself better all the time. Yeah. Maybe you're fine just as you are. Yeah. Really. Yeah. And then there's other things that will inspire you and bring you into a new place of evolving self. But if you give yourself a break and just say, I'm fine just the way I am, then you come out of that judgment place. You come more deeper in the body, you come more to the heart. And because the mind takes direction from the heart. Mm-hmm. But the mind always wants to figure something out. Mm-hmm. So you have to let it be in that place of figuring something out. But you don't have to be in charge of that. You just go to your heart, and your heart can tell your mind what to do. Think of your heart as the grandmother, the revered grandmother. Mm-hmm. And the mind is like the soldier. I got to do this. I got to protect the family. I got to do this. I got to be the warrior. I got to figure this out. Fine. That's your character. But take your directive from the grandmother. Because the grandmother is the only one that soldier is going to stop for.
Oh, I love that analogy. And I so needed that. I was having a rough morning today, and I think there was a battle. There was a war going on between the brain saying you are far behind doing all the things you need to get done, and you need to be all things to everyone. And my heart was like being very quiet, going, well, you're not listening to me.
Right. So when the grandmother says, sit down, that's when that mental soldier goes, whoa, all right, stops everything. Yes, grandma. Right? Because there's a respect there.
Yeah. Right? Oh my gosh. That alone just helped me, like, it's as though you sparked flow through just that.
Right.
That, the tip, or whatever you want to call it, the insight.
Think of it in a practical sense. If your heart stops beating, you're done. But if your heart keeps beating and your brain shuts down, you're still alive. And that's a sad state for some people go into comas, things like that, Mm-hmm. And it's not until the heart stops that you transition, right? So the heart is the king, the queen, the grandmother, whatever, the heart comes first. So now what you can do is, with your consciousness, you can notice, I'm in a place of judgment. Oh, I notice how I'm judging this person or myself. Where would I like to refocus my mind? Right down into the heart.
Energy. I'm just channeling the energy from a different place.
Yeah. But that's the directive. The consciousness can notice the judgment and refocus the mind, because the highest capacity of the mind is to focus. It's mostly chitter chatter. Now decide use your consciousness, decide what to focus on. Might be the heart. Sometimes you put your hand there. Some people they'll talk and they'll put their hand there and la, 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 la. So use that.
Absolutely.
Because the heart's beating blood all over the body. I mean, it's just doing its job constantly, right? And we can be grateful for that, for keeping us alive.
It reminds me, I used to do group meditation classes, and one of my favorite ones was the heart-centered meditation. Mm-hmm. And it would be with women during the pandemic. Yeah. And we would all put our hand on our heart, and there would not be one dry eye. Like, all of us, for some reason, would just have tears in our eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, just getting in touch with ourselves. It's like, oh God, I forgot about myself, because mothers are taking care of children all the time, and you're at your job with your boss, etc., and you have basic needs.
Yes.
Right? So just to get in touch with yourselves, what is my need? I need to just exhale. And here comes a tear. Good. Just let a little bit of spill of a tear come out, and it'll release the high peak of tension from holding it back. I had a remarkable Tai Chi teacher for about 25 years, and we were just warming up in the class doing some qigong, and we were doing a movement like from top to bottom, and at one point he just says, drop your heart. We said, what? Drop your heart? He was really trying to say, just empty the heart a little bit, drop your burden, right? Just empty a little bit, because our hearts can be very full. Our emotions can be very full, which is why you touch your heart, you have a little tear, because you've got to drip, you've got to release the tension, the pressure, right?
Yeah.
So do that. Just drop the heart. Let the heaviness drop. Just let go of your burden. If it's meant for you to carry, you can pick it up again.
You're so profoundly correct. And I remember during my meditation training, one of my instructors said, it's emotions, and meaning that there's an energy around that entity, emotions. And so when the tears are those motions.
Yes, movement.
Movement.
Movement, energy, information. And what is the motion? What is the emotion trying to tell you?
Yeah. It really ties back to healing. But absolutely, flow, energy, and healing, and just really all this connected. But that is just what I was drawn to when I wanted to bring you here and talk about this. It's not just about one technique like the Alexander technique. It's all connected. There are all these different methods.
Yeah, somatics has many different modalities underneath that umbrella.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful because it's something for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
But flow is just there. We just have to remove what's in the way of flow. But I don't focus on what's in the way. I focus on flow. It's like focusing on the whole body will take care of the parts, right? So you just learn over time through some kind of practice that you're becoming more aware, becoming more keen, you're getting to know yourself, you recognize you have needs, right? You do your best to meet them within a short time frame. And you learn that kind of self-respect.
Yeah,
while you're taking care of others. It's not our job to save people, but we can present ideas and suggestions. Now, as parents, it's our job to protect and raise our children well. But at some point, people have to save themselves if they're on the precipice, So,
yeah, absolutely. And dropping into the heart. Well, so many lessons there. In closing, do you have any insights or tips for maybe one Alexander tip or technique for perhaps even women?
Yeah. Women's center of gravity is lower, in their bone structure. Men is higher. And you see women in the corporate sphere, or any politician you see, and their center of gravity, they've raised it up just like a man's, right? They don't know they're doing it or trying to live in the man's world. So bring your energy down between your belly button and your sexual center, which is above your pubic bone. Breathe there. Recognize your power is low and inside. And inside, like inside a cave, it's dark. But that's yin. It's like nighttime. That's yin, right? Yeah. Yin power. Darkness is nothing to be afraid of. Darkness is feminine power. So that's just practical way of seeing your womb inside. So whether you have babies or not, you still have a feminine energy in the lower realm. It's also considered the lower dantian, which is a Tai Chi statement. A dantian means a field of elixir. So it's your own medicine field. So you just want to spend time there and get familiar with this. Now, this is not directly Alexander technique, but it's more for women to really get that their anatomy gives them a certain kind of power. And so when you stand with your energy low, you bring your mind down low, it give you a different feeling of security on the ground, right? And then that's the lower lumbar, and the rest of the spine comes up, and the skull can toggle way up on top above that.
Yeah. When I do qigong, they talk about the power center. That's the power center, right?
Yeah, there are many power centers, which is why I collected 13 for that course, 13 points of power. But in particular, the lower dantian is where transformation happens. So if you have anything of excess, you can put it in there. You can create a little pot. The Chinese call it the place where you cook the rice, because it's an inner alchemical process. You have a container, empty space, and you bring in a fire, and you can cook, and then the water, everything transforms. So I say to every woman just to spend a little time there go inside from their hand on their belly, go inside a couple inches towards the spine and breathe.
Lower belly breaths.
Yeah.
And that actually affects the vagus nerve, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So you can calm down, come back to yourself.
That is so profound.
Visit that on a daily basis.
I forget these things, but I think especially what you mentioned with corporate women often living in this higher hemisphere, I, for one, probably have for many years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's still a male-dominated world. So in order to rise up in your career, you kind of have to fit that mold to some degree. And that's starting to change in some places, but we need more of that. And in the meantime, you'll be healthier because you'll be bringing energy to your ovaries, your womb, your uterus, all of that. If you don't bring energy there and allow for movement of circulation, it can get stagnant, right?
Yeah.
And if for some reason any of those body parts are gone, you can still bring your energy there and focus on the power of the template that is the feminine energy for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was very, very beautifully expressed and articulated, and it makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's more, I guess, of a qigong perspective than it is Alexander technique.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I absolutely enjoyed our conversation. I got so much out of it on so many levels.
Well, me too.
Thank you.
It's wonderful being in conversation with you and sharing these thoughts and ideas.
I hope you will come back again in the future for similar categories if you have time.
Sure, happy to.
Well, have a wonderful day.
Great, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks again for tuning in. Check out the links in the description, and please subscribe, follow, and share. And continue to be omnipresent.